Hi, welcome to the Jake Rouse Show. My guest today is Tina Mengine. Tina is the CEO of the Erie County Redevelopment Authority, and Tina and I have known each other for over 25 years and worked together in a variety of capacities. While I don't know all of Tina's professional experiences, I am confident the development work she is doing today is the most challenging and most rewarding work of her life. I'm excited to dig in deeper with Tina about her career arc and discuss the challenges, frustrations, and excitement of doing large-scale economic development projects. I hope you enjoy. Let's go. All right, Tina. Tina, as I was preparing for this today, I sat down and I go, I've known Tina my whole life. But I have not known you my whole life.
No, but it feels that way. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, thank you for being here. No, it's funny because as I was setting up, I all of a sudden realized I'm like, well, I know this ages us, but I'm like, I've known Tina for 25 years probably, right? But there's a big window of I know you're from Pittsburgh. But what I don't know is I don't even know where you went to college and what you got your degree in.
You don't know. Yeah, you don't know any of that early life stuff.
And I was waiting for you to say, and you won't.
No. I grew up in Pittsburgh. Typical blue-collar family,
When you say blue collar, what does your dad?
My
He
dad
didn't work in a
worked.
steel mill or anything like that? I mean.
No, not quite, but close. He worked for Duquesne Light.
Oh, okay.
So he actually started in the shoveling coal.
Wow. All right. That's
it's
about as blue collar as you can get.
But then he worked his way up to some sort of engineering position.
Mm-hmm.
He would map out where the new lines would go.
Okay.
So, just my mother worked part-time, off and on, at a bank, at a candy distributor. We loved that job as kids.
I'm sure
we
you did.
always had candy. But yeah, we were just your typical, blue-collar, middle-class family in Pittsburgh. I was the first one to go to college when I graduated from La Roche College, which is like plays Gannon in basketball, with a degree in business administration or management and administration. I think they called it. Got my first real job selling Muzak.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Isn't that the elevator stuff?
That's the elevator stuff.
Who do you sell that to?
Back then, companies would, restaurants, a lot of companies would have that so that
It would be playing in the background as you were shopping
or working in the shop because they were tired of people fighting over what radio station, and they had to pay fees if they were.
That's right.
So I would always tell people, if you can sell Muzak, you can sell anything.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 That must have been how many years did you do that?
Well, that company, Radio Enterprises of Ohio, which was based in Ashtabula, owned 4 radio stations, 2 in Ohio, 2 in Kentucky. They owned the newspapers in Northeast Ohio, and they also eventually got into the pager business and the mobile phone business.
That's a pretty lucrative little company.
They
family owned?
Family owned. Dick and Dave Raleigh had brothers who had inherited the newspaper business and then expanded it to a nice sized little media company. So I went from Muzak to the radio stations.
Were you selling advertising at the radio stations?
I started selling advertising, worked my way up to general manager. Then I did some of the early days to get an application for cellular was a lottery. So I would travel around the country to the communities where they wanted to, where they thought they could secure a license. So they had won the law.
I'm sorry, to sell cellular telephones or cellular
So
communications?
there was, this is how old I am, so most of your listeners probably won't even understand what we're talking about.
Certainly.
Um,
They will. We have, since we haven't officially launched yet, we have no demographics.
so to get a cellular tower, you need, this is how early this was. I was young still, but they'd fly me to Florida and Arizona, and I'd have to negotiate a lease with a landowner or a property owner, saying, yes, if we win the lottery for a cellular tower, you can put it on my property or on my top of my building. So
Wow.
I would go around, and I went around and did that for them, and then they won a lottery in Akron, I think, and maybe one in Arizona, and then they just turned around and sold it to AT&T. Or
Interesting.
yeah, so they were very smart business people, and I learned a lot from them. It was a great. I was there about 10 years, and I went from Muzak all the way up to doing that kind of work for them.
Great experience.
It was.
So, where were you? Were you living and working in Ashtabula, or were you working
Erie.
in Erie? Okay.
Because the Muzak territory covered Erie County and Ashtabula County. And then when I started doing radio work, I would just drive back and forth to Ashtabula, which is only about 40 minutes. It wasn't a bad drive.
So let's see here. So did you leave there and were you in a radio operation in Erie then? Did you transfer?
Do you remember the old K104?
Oh, yeah.
I was at K104 when it transitioned from K104 to Mix 103.7. Yeah, I know.
Wow. Lots of flashbacks there.
Yeah, lots of flashbacks. So I was there for a few years, and then I got out of the radio business.
It's funny because that is radio, the radio business and radio stations. We were around for how big they used to be.
Oh,
Huge.
Yeah, I mean, it was to think back to then when it was. You would call a station, they'd play your favorite song. You were dealing with
My wife and
businesses.
I talked about this, and
Yeah.
how you'd make mixtapes of your favorite music, and so you'd call to request a song and be standing there with your recording, ready to record.
Yeah, your little cassette
Your
tape
cassette
or whatever.
tape, right?
Yeah.
And then you'd have this mixtape that you could play or give to your friends.
Yeah, or
I
your
just think,
girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think, like, in this day and age where it's like you want that song, you get it immediately wherever you are.
Or you just,
And in the old days, it was like if you weren't buying the album, and even then, it's like, no, I want to listen to my favorite songs where,
right.
when I'm out with the friends or at a party, I don't want to wait around for them, and I'm too cheap to buy the album
Yeah.
or the cassette.
Or the 45s.
Yeah.
You'd have a stack of them, and they'd keep falling down onto the turntable.
Oh, my God.
How far we've come.
Yes, we have. So what was your first foray then once you left the radio business? Where did you go? Did you go into advertising?
I did. I went to work for a small advertising firm, and that was doing mostly retail, commercial, car dealers, furniture stores, that kind of thing. And I somehow got into political advertising. In fact, my first client was Joe Conti, who ran for district attorney.
And you won.
And we won. And that just kind of snowballed. Then
He was a nice guy.
He was a great guy. Yeah, a really nice guy. And that just sort of snowballed into a career in political advertising, then campaign management, and then I spent the next, couple decades in that world.
And where I think that we were acquainted before this period, but you went to work and maybe you worked on the campaign for Mayor Filippi.
Yes.
And so you became his chief of staff.
Yes.
And I think that's where you and I started working. That was early 2000, 2002,
Somewhere in that
4 or
era.
5, something
Yeah.
like, yeah.
That's where we really started working together closely.
Yeah, and there is a method to my madness here, and part of
Just not telling people how old I am.
yeah, I never will. No, I think it's very interesting because it's easy for us to jump into kind of the work you're doing now, but it's the experiences of getting. I believe that why you are as successful as you are in the work you're doing right now is because of the totality of the experiences you've
No
had before.
question. No question.
And so, for instance, as an example, there's running a campaign and marketing a campaign, and then there's governing. And so your experience of going in and dealing with a very strong mayor, right? Rick was he had a very definitive vision,
He really did.
and then you've got staff within City Hall that you're managing, combined with a city council that was extremely opinionated as well.
I will say that maybe not in the whole history of Erie's existence, but in its modern history, our city council may have been one of the absolute worst, most difficult to deal with.
That's what I was going to correct you. Very difficult to deal with.
Yes.
I found them, though, to be very. They knew the system. They knew the city,
Yes.
and they knew city government, and they loved, so when they were battling you, they were battling you kind of almost on procedural ways of getting in your way and knowing how to play the game. They weren't just bashing. They were crafty.
Well, I think that, you had a lot of folks who had been there a long time. They knew how to work the system, and you have this young buck coming in with all these new ideas and how do you do things differently and how I'm going to, execute his vision quickly, and they were just going to have none of it. So,
And he also was a peer of theirs just the year before, right? He was on city council.
which was usually you have some goodwill there, but there was no goodwill, not from day one.
Well, Rick he broke the mold,
Yeah.
in the sense of he didn't put in 4 terms on city council before he decided to run for mayor.
He just wasn't one of the good old boys, and that just, that just didn't rub well. And listen, he made mistakes. We made mistakes. We thought our good ideas were enough and didn't understand how to work with folks and work the system. And you learn that over time. But by that point, you're several years in and you're pretty beat up and you're just exhausted.
Yeah. And, Rick and I went to college together, high school and college together, so we were good friends. I love seeing him still. Patience is the word.
Yes.
He wanted it, and he got frustrated when his ideas were being pushed back on, not because they were necessarily the bad ideas. It was just too much too fast.
It was.
And he had a vision. The stuff that he was identifying to address, if anyone can go back and look at his plan, he was on point.
Absolutely on point on almost everything. And if you look at where Erie is today, we're actually implementing his ideas from 20 years ago.
Completely agree.
He was maybe before his time. Maybe Erie and its leaders weren't ready for it, but he had a vision of where Erie needed to go, and we're there now.
That's right. And you know what? It just reminded me that and we don't need to go into the unfortunate circumstances, but you did serve as mayor for a period of time,
It's
didn't
not
you?
official.
It was not official. Okay.
It's not official, but the press deemed me as the acting mayor, but it was it was an unofficial title. But it was, there was a time where I had to step up and step in, and again, a good learning experience for the next step in my career, which was a couple years in Congress, but mostly for this position I'm a big believer that there are no straight lines to get to where you need to go. You're going to take twists and turns. You're going to step backwards sometimes, but eventually all of that leads you to the right place.
Yeah, I mean, the path forward is a zigzag line.
Absolutely.
And so let's just talk about it. So it's very interesting because when you do this 4-year term, it's over. And what was the window? I mean, ultimately, you mentioned going to Congress, and were you chief of staff for Kathy Dahlkemper as well?
Yes.
So when you left office, did you go into immediately kind of like helping run her campaign and do that? Or
Almost immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you work on campaigns, they're obviously cyclical. Someone gets elected, you got to go find another campaign to work on, unless you are fortunate to be hired, which I was in Mayor Flippy's case, and then in Dahlkemper's case. I did some nonprofit work and some campaign work after that term was up, and one of that campaign was
which one are we talking about?
After Flippy, Mayor Flippy, I did some nonprofit work, and I was working on a campaign down in Washington, PA. And then Kathy Dahlkemper called me, and I picked her up then as a candidate, and then that became a full-time job, and everything else had to fall by the wayside, because when you're running a congressional, if you think running a citywide race is all-consuming, try running one that runs from Butler County up to Erie County.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was huge, and, it was a lot, and it's much more intense, much more money to raise.
Who did Kathy beat in the primary?
She was running against 3 other folks, Kyle Faust, an attorney, Tom, I can't remember his name, and a young man who was a preacher.
Okay.
So
she went.
But Kyle was the main candidate.
So she wins, and then who did she beat in the general?
Phil English. Yeah.
Who was the incumbent?
Yes.
Wow, that's and then so you that's you do.
But timing is everything. If I can just interrupt,
please,
because she wins during a wave of Obama coming in, so she's being carried by Obama. It's the Iraq War, and so the need for change, right? Not that she wasn't a good candidate. She worked her tail off. But there's this timing thing, right? It's time for Bush to leave. Obama comes in. Everybody wants a fresh face. I think you're going to see that this cycle, this presidential cycle too. Not that I was a great campaign manager or she wasn't a good candidate, but all those
100%.
things kind of merged together and carried her in.
So when you was it an eye-opening experience after winning to go to Congress, be like, okay, we got this agenda, let's roll? Did you kind of get patted on the head, said, just sit in the corner and wait your turn?
I could tell you some stories. There's not enough time on this podcast, but so we go down. She's got, they win the House. We got the majority in the Senate, the House, the White House. Yeah, right. So you think you're again? It was reminiscent of my little city world with Mayor Flippy, in that you've got this young guy full of ideas and energy. We think we're gonna change the world, and then you run up against roadblock after roadblock. But I'll tell you a quick story. So we're there. She's like, we're gonna be bipartisan. My district is purple. I'm what they considered a blue dog, which was a conservative Democrat, and we're going to work with everybody on both sides of the aisle. Glenn Thompson from a neighboring
State College area,
yeah,
but he has a portion of Didn't he have a portion of Erie County at the time?
He had Warren and
Warren Crawford.
Crawford, so parts of Crawford. So he was our neighbor. So we get together, his team and our team, and say, we're going to hold these bipartisan breakfasts for the Pennsylvania delegation. So I get a phone call from Representative Murtha's office.
So just to be clear, Glenn Thompson was thumbs up, like, yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this. Yeah.
Republican. Okay.
Yeah. They're freshmen. They're coming in. They're all like, doe-eyed, like we're going to change the world. I get a call from Rep Murtha's office. Rep Murtha is Johnstown. Very powerful.
Yeah. Huge defense contracting guy, defense.
Military. Big. He calls me and says, what are you doing?
Oh, not much, Jack. I'm just hanging out.
Well, we're holding, because he's like, listen, you don't do these kinds of things. I'll host this breakfast and pay for it, but it'll be the last one you do.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, okay. And Kathy's like, why? And he pulls her in, and they turned out to be very close, and he kind of took her under his wing and kind of taught her the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ropes is you just don't do these bipartisan breakfasts or get-togethers. That's not how it works. We sit over there, and you sit over there, and that's that. And it was, so you're like, from day one, you're like, oh, we aren't really bipartisan no matter what we say. That's just not the way it's going to be. And so that was very eye-opening.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
It is, and it really kind of set the tone for the rest of the 2 years.
Yeah.
And we thought those 2 years were bad, but they are nothing compared to what we see today.
Oh, not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close. And in fact, I've made this reference to people. I said, and again, just I'm not a fan of either party. Just to be clear, I've been registered for each party, for an equal amount of time in my life, and I should probably be independent, but I like to vote in primaries. And I said, when J.D. Vance and Pultz, I can't remember his name, wasn't it Pultz, the governor of Minnesota, the vice presidential candidate?
Pulitz.
What was it?
Jared Pulitz.
No, what is that? No. We're sounding like I'm making myself a fool here. J.D. Vance and Pultz, Mike Pultz, I can't remember what his name was, but when they debated, and after they got done debating, and people said, well, why can't we have these guys? And I thought to myself, that debate, comparing that debate
I know who you're talking
about. Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, who are debating at a policy, they're discussing issues, and what they're in the same tent, like, we do have to solve this. Here's how I would solve the issue, and it's a well thought out, defined kind of approach and policy on both sides. So when they said, oh, I'd vote for these guys, I'm like, that's how far it's come, because we weren't talking. This is after the debate where President Biden and President Trump were arguing about who's a better golfer, which is mind-boggling.
The bar is so low now on who we elect and what we expect of them. It's very disappointing, and I think we're seeing the outcome of lowering the bar.
Well, if you really think about it, a 28-year-old today has had 10 years of what we would call really just hyper-partisan and divisive politics.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that they really, as they become politically active, don't realize that it used to not be that way.
No.
And
but that's all they know.
That's all they know. And so we just have to be mindful of that going forward. And I remain an optimist that we will get back to some level of civility at that level. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. There's been major damage done on both sides, in my mind, to kind of civic discourse, and we need to move forward. But you've had this great experience of being in the center of that, federal government storm. And so then you leave there, and then what?
Wow. I had decided that I had enough of politics, that was, a good portion of my life, and I'd had enough. So I went to work for Edinburgh University
Mm-hmm.
as the vice president of advancement, and quickly learned that higher ed is more political than Washington, D.C.
Amen.
That was something I was not prepared for.
Talk to anyone who works at a university, they'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah. So after about 3 years there, I think, I took a job with Governor Wolf's office in the Governor's Action Team, which was the economic development arm of that administration. And the rest is history. Here I am now.
Yeah. And so you went from the Governor's Action Team job to the Erie County Redevelopment Authority.
Yes.
And so one of the highest pieces of praise I can give you is that I had to remind myself of a lot of this, and some of it I did not know at all, but I had to remind myself of this because I just kind of think of Erie County Redevelopment Authority and I think of you and the work you're doing. And I think it's because, yes, you have been in there, but you haven't just been in there. Like, you haven't just been filling a seat. You walked into the position and you got up to plate and took a swing at a project that most people would say, well, why don't we try a single before we try to hit a home run ball? So it's very interesting. Now, I think it is contextually, we got to frame that up because people would say, yeah, but give a little bit of background of the nature of the work that the Governor's Action Team does, because I do think that gives you both, it gives context to why it fits, why you fit there, and more importantly, what you saw and learned through that process.
Well, the Governor's Action Team is, again, the business development arm of the Department of Community and Economic Development. And that's a mouthful, I know. But our job was to go out and literally help businesses, both, and I had a 13-county region, of which Erie was the center. But I would go visit businesses in Potter County, Crawford County. We would provide assistance through capital investment, whether they were grants or low-interest loans or whatever form of assistance they needed. So if a business was looking to expand, maybe they were looking to relocate, we were there to work through that and to help them in any way we could. And then we also had a pretty active attraction program where we were talking with companies from all over the world who were looking to relocate into Pennsylvania and hopefully into, our region. So it was a really good foundation for the work I'm doing today. Because, I worked with businesses in the radio world. In Congress, I worked with businesses when we were in City Hall. In Congress, we were on the Small Business Committee, Science and Tech Committee, which was all business and investment related. But the real work of economic development, I learned firsthand through the Governor's Action Team. That was really where it got down and dirty, where you and I, Jake, were talking to businesses and how do we keep them here? How do we find them the resources they need to expand?
And working with prospects, looking at the area and getting
Exactly.
deep into that. And I think that one of the things that people need to realize is that the Governor's Action Team, what happens is that somebody is in growth and expansion mode. They make a phone call and saying, what can you do for us? Or they talk to a politician who calls the governor's office, which we have a governor's office here. And right now, Mike Ferrito is the head of that office.
Yes.
And what he would do is say, okay, this is a growth and expansion opportunity, and immediately turn to who the governor's action team representative is for the region.
Right.
And you were that rep. And then you go, and on behalf of the governor, you're going in to meet with them. It's almost always a confidential visit.
Always.
And they're saying, we are looking at the state of North Carolina and the state of Ohio to potentially grow and expand. We want to stay here. We need to add 100,000, 200,000 square feet of space. We need some, right? What can you do to help keep us here?
Yes.
And the state does not just willy-nilly give money away. You need to dig in and make sure, well, okay, are you viable? Are you going to grow and expand? And so it's a very respectful due diligence process, but it's a due diligence process.
It's a serious due diligence process. I can recall meeting with company multiple times, filling out a report, making a recommendation, and, you got to go back and look at the last 5 years of financials, not just the last 2 years. Why did they do this? Where did this investment come from? Why did they lose 10 jobs? Why, it was very, very thorough, and it really made me not just understand corporations' balance sheet, but also look at things from their wage rate, their benefits, how they operate. I mean, the state wants to invest in businesses that are going to grow, that are going to expand, but that are also treating their employees right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very holistic approach.
It is, and it's the other thing that I think people may not appreciate is, so somebody knocks on the door, or the state has a prospect, and we've checked the first box. We have a building that meets their needs, or we have vacant land that meets their needs, and then they want to learn more, and so they come and they do a site visit, and all of a sudden they start asking you questions about your sewer capacity and your ability to treat BODs, and what's, the water capacity. That they want to know what's the power to the site, and if it isn't the power they need, how can they get it, and what would the timeline be, and then what's the permitting process, and we're also going to have some truck traffic, and we need to talk to PennDOT, and so a big part of what you're doing through that job is understanding all of the variables involved in making a multi-million-dollar decision to bring jobs here. Not, hey, we liked your brochure.
Right.
And
if only it was that easy.
Yeah.
And I think that's always the misconception from the public is that, you have 100 acres there, or why isn't that? Why didn't they pick us? Why'd they pick Ohio, or why'd they pick, North Carolina? Well, we didn't necessarily have all of the components. Like, it has to be a good fit for a company to make a major move and investment. And it is complicated, but today, more than even 10 years ago, it's about your labor force. It's somebody said to me just earlier today, land, labor, capital. Like, what can you bring to the table? Is it the right property? Do you have the labor force and the right skills? And then what are the capital incentives? What else can you bring to the table to de-risk this deal? Mm-hmm. And I think those are and then you've got all the other things you talked about, permitting, timing. Timing is everything. Speed to market is critical.
Oh, yeah. Land, labor, capital, those variables are the first check boxes. Do you have the land I need? And they've kind of, if you had the building, that would be great. But do you have the land I need?
Right. With
the right access and infrastructure and near proximity or on site? Do you have the labor? And if you can't check those first two boxes, it isn't. They're not being mean. They're like, we got to move on down the road.
Right. These are private companies investing their own money, millions and millions of dollars, or whether they're private or public company, they're reporting back to somebody, and they've got to make, prudent decisions. And
Yep.
we need to be respectful of that and understand what they need.
And it is helpful because it helps us understand then what we need to bring to the market to meet those needs. And so, in your role now with the Redevelopment Authority, that's what you're working on. But I want to go back to what I had chatted about before about the big project, right? So it seemed like it was within 2 weeks. It's like Tina's been appointed. It's like the first project we are going to redevelop the Erie Malleable Iron property. Are you out of your mind? I mean, because it now, Ironworks Square and EMI and that site and the progress it's making. I think the magnitude of that, you have to confess to me right here that where we are from a cost standpoint is nowhere near where you thought it would be.
Listen, first of all, for our listeners, Jake is my board chair. So he went along with my madness.
So yeah, let's just. I do think that this is there. There is something here. Okay, so, because it's an important caveat. So we had the unfortunate experience in Erie County under a different leadership, where there was an entity called Develop Erie, and under Develop Erie, there were multiple agencies that each had different roles and functions. There was one staff providing staff work to all those agencies, but they each had different. The one that was charged with industrial land acquisition and development was Greater Erie Industrial Development Corporation, and through some unfortunate decisions that were made, that entity went bankrupt. And the assets of that meant that when people would call on Erie and saying, hey, they would be wanting to talk to an industrial development corporation, find out what assets. We had no assets.
None.
We had no entity to develop land, and people need to understand you need to have, in a community like Erie, the market is never going to develop industrial land. They're never going to take on a brownfield project because it's for a private interest. The cost of it is too exorbitant.
It doesn't pencil out. They'll always be upside down.
Right. So we took one of the entities that used to be an industrial incubator, the Enterprise Development Center of Erie County, and repurposed it as the industrial land and building development entity. And so that entity is the entity that I serve as the chair. So it owns lands and buildings. So the first acquisition we ever made was the Better's property out at IP, which is the power plant.
Which was before me.
Which is before you, for a prospect. We thought that they were going to need it, and it was just so people don't think we're talking. It was a company in Canada called Atlantic Packaging. They were looking to do a $400 million corrugated box recycling plant that was moving great guns going forward. And then there was a divorce, I believe, in the family that put everything on hold, and the project ended up going away. So the Enterprise Development Center, in its raucous start to being a new land developer, owned a 14-acre parcel of land at the IP site.
Yes.
And so you came on board, and that was your portfolio that you had.
That was my portfolio. It was pretty sad. So we operate very similar, essentially the same way as the
Old Develop Erie.
Yeah. With the Redevelopment Authority being that kind of parent company that has all of the staffing and everything. So I came in 2019, was hired with a small loan portfolio, business loan, revolving loan fund, and one piece of property, this property that you guys had purchased. And then COVID hit shortly after, and I spent the next, year giving out emergency loans and grants to businesses and trying to keep them afloat. But also what came out of that was some American Rescue Plan dollars. So I think this is probably where my city experiences came in. Have always been appalled by the look of 12th Street and our inability to ever really revitalize that. And there was so much money going into our downtown, but the main thoroughfare to get there looked like it was still 1970s industry. At least that was my perspective. So I took an opportunity to pitch the city and the county for some of those American Rescue Plan dollars so I could buy a couple pieces of property that I thought needed immediate attention, the most prominent being the former Erie Malibu Iron business at 12th and Cherry. And I will admit to you that the project is way bigger than I ever anticipated. I remember giving a tour probably to the board and elected officials saying, this time next year, this thing is going to be thriving. So, perhaps a little naive and Pollyanna, but we're 5 years into it and we'll be done this fall. And it's going to transform. I wanted it to be a catalyst. I wanted it to be beautiful so that it would attract business. And it is, and it's filling a void for for businesses and the gap we have in space. But I also wanted it to be a catalyst for the rest of 12th Street. So I had a vision that went not just to meet immediate economic development needs, but to spur further development. And I'm confident it's going to do that.
I do too. I mean, I think that it's going to beautify the street. It's going to provide space. And I think it can provide folks a kind of a template or a vision of these industrial buildings, their assets along that street. And that was the worst of the bunch.
There's two bad properties, that one and one on the east side. And we started with the one we could get.
Yep. And we got it, and it will show folks, we got this one, but there's a lot of there's good bones in these buildings. They do need attention along 12th Street, and 12th Street as a whole. How can we make that not to run from the industrial history?
No.
It's quite the opposite. That is the greatest infrastructure for manufacturing in Erie County is the 12th Street corridor from basically Pittsburgh Avenue right to GE or Wabtec.
Yes.
So we want those. That is a viable corridor, and there's great businesses there employing people. What we want to do is there's no, how do we make it look more like the vibrant corridor that it actually is? That's why you sold us on that vision and the catalyst. And the other thing is, if you were panicking, you did a hell of a job of not letting us see your feet under the water, because just conceptually, because this is a public project. I mean, we probably thought it was a $20 to $25 million project to start, and we're going to be at 42, 43.
Well, I don't want to confuse people. We'll be at 30.
Oh, that's right.
For the existing building, and then a second building adds another 10 to 12 million.
That's right.
So I don't want people to think that I was off that much on my predictions.
But to your credit, and this is where I want to kind of draw the connections on the federal level and the state level, the grant dollars, at the programs that have participated and the partnerships. Congressman Kelly has been a huge supporter of this. Governor Shapiro has been a huge supporter. Yes. Our state delegation, has been an incredible support for this, as have been our senators at the federal level, federal administrators. Like, you've done an amazing job of assembling the dollars to support this project.
I give credit to my team. I have a really good team. We're small but mighty, but we've brought in probably two-thirds of that funding is grant funding, and that's significant. You don't usually see that.
20 million out of 30, that's very
yeah.
significant.
Yeah, and it's everything from the EPA to help clean up the ground and to demolish, to federal appropriations, state RACP, multiple different state and federal funding sources. We've pretty much tapped them all, and it's good team, good grant writers, good effort, good lobbying on our part, good to have connections, but the project still has to make sense. You know, the federal government might give you $1 because they like you and they know you, but they're not going to give you $1 million. So we've been able to raise the money for this project because it's a good project. I also think it's important for others to know that that money is coming back to Erie instead of Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, and that we can do big projects here, just like they do in other communities. We just can't be afraid to swing for the fences.
I think that and when you're able to handle a project that has the challenges and the complexities of this and get it over the finish line, it sets up a confidence level that when we go back, and I'm very confident we're not going to run into another one of the, like, we're really dealing with a very challenging project. But bottom line is, at the federal and state level, they're good stewards of the money. They delivered on what they said, and that's currency for the future.
Yes.
And that's why it's really important. And so I want to, it's really, I want to wrap in some things because we there's the 12th Street corridor. There was equally a property that I always joked with folks, the Quinn T property, which most people in the city of Erie County have never seen in their life because it's off the beaten path.
Right.
And somebody said, I go, that's the most contaminated site in Erie County. And they're like, well, what did they make there? And I go, asbestos.
That's exactly right. They made roofing materials entirely out of asbestos.
Yeah. So at one point, so we acquired that one.
Yes, because we only take on the
Right.
worst of the
So
worst.
at one point, our portfolio of real estate was the Betters property, which has the dilapidated power plant on it.
Yep.
The EMI property and Quinty.
Yeah. We only go for the best, the highest and best.
But amazingly, we talked about what happened with EMI. Let's talk about Quinty, and then let's talk about the Betters property, because I think these are just amazing success stories.
So Quinty is about 5 acres. It's a full city block, which actually is the same size as Erie Malabar or Ironworks Square is what it will be called when it's finished. They're both a full city block. So one's 5.5 acres, the other one's just shy of 5 acres. When we inherited, or when we purchased the Quinty property, which is at 16th and French, it had been a site that, in its heyday, which was up until 1980-ish, was producing roofing materials out of asbestos. That was its primary ingredient, component. It had shut down, had a number of fires over the years, and buildings would be torn down. The fire department would just tear it down and let it just kind of collapse there on site. What was left was a smokestack and one building. And when we toured that building for the first time, of course, we bought it without touring it because we figured there was no reason to tour it. We probably should have. There was literally asbestos stuck to the ceiling and the walls, like you were walking through a cave with,
Yeah, right. Stalagmites or stalactites. Right,
yeah. So the police are there to open up the doors for us, and they said that there's homeless they're in there, and I said, well, could you go in and get them out, please? And out comes this guy, and he says, "What are you doing? I have permission to live here." And I'm like, "Well, I just bought the property, and we need to tour it. Is there anybody else in there? And how many of you live in here?" He said, "Oh, just 2 or 3 of us." Well, we go in, and I had a whole crew of engineers and, hard hat guys. And we're walking through, and the first floor is, bad. We get to the second floor, we see some, remnants of people living there. We get to the third floor. Now, this is a 100,000 square foot building. This is a big building, and it's built like a bunker. It's all concrete. We get to the third floor, and they have bedrooms set up, probably a dozen of them. Dirty mattresses on the floor and like shower curtains dividing them. Oh my God, it looks like more than 2 people live here. We get to the fourth floor, and it was something I'll never forget. And every person on that crew, and there must have been a dozen of us, were stunned into silence. It was a whole city built on that floor. There was a food pantry. There was rainwater being collected for showers. There were toys, meaning children were living there. It was just awful. It was awful because, A, they're homeless and they're living in this building, but then it was also awful because they were living in an asbestos-filled building that was literally stuck to the walls and ceiling. So we bring in the necessary folks to start cleaning it up after we worked with the county to relocate them. And the asbestos contractor said, "This is the worst single site I have seen in my entire career." That's how bad it was.
Yeah, 16th and French.
16th and
right
French.
Right there, with housing across the street.
With housing across the street, kids playing in that area, in that vacant lot. So it's taken us quite a bit of time. We were able to tear down the building relatively quickly and the smokestack, but it's taken us quite a bit of time because we keep finding basements and all kinds of
Yeah, there were some underground tanks there
that were the size of rail cars. It was challenging. So we are close now. The board accepted an offer on the property, and it should be see some redevelopment next year.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I remember the press conference when it was announced that it had been acquired and what the plan was to clear it and bring it back into some form of productive reuse. And it was either the county executive or the mayor was speaking, and all the dignitaries were facing the crowd, and all of us were looking up, and the homeless people were walking out of the building. While the press conference was going on. It was pretty stunning.
It was.
Talk about the Betters property at IP. There's just contextually so people understand. There's 2 parcels on the IP site on the north yard, so north of Route 5 or 6th Street. And the big parcel where there's a headquarters, the old headquarters building is called, that's the north yard. So that has 2 parcels. That one's about 70 acres, 72 acres. And then the parcel that the Enterprise Development Center, the Erie County Redevelopment Authority owns, was 14 acres. And this is really an exciting project because it's a growth and expansion of a young company.
So we have shown that property to a number of folks over the years, and we've had offers on it that didn't work out, which happens in our business, right? We showed it to a company called Modular Engineering. That group owns Modular Engineering, Corporate Glass, and ME Construction. So those 3 companies make up an organization called 9 Ships. We take these guys out there, and they immediately loved it. Saw the vision, just thrilled with it. They are Modular Engineering is the company that's growing by leaps and bounds. So this organization, they own these 3 companies. They have about 90 employees. They are in a small, tight building on 18th Street, which they lease, and they can't keep up with their orders. So we
Just to give people conceptually, if I'm not mistaken, modular engineering makes kind of think of you're driving into a plant and there's a security box, right, where people are that you would drive in. They would make the security, like where the security guards would be, or they would make the on a big crane. They
Yes,
would
the
be
cab.
the cab that all the controls would be in, and people would be operating.
Right.
Like
Yeah. So they take a shipping container and retrofit it into whatever is needed. They're doing a lot of work for businesses that are in the data center. They're doing data center construction. We were on site yesterday touring their facility, and they had 2 cabs that they had made for submarine. Like they retrofit the unit, but they also put in all the electrical and whatever. So you'll sit
Yes.
in this cab, and you'll build the submarine from in this cab.
interesting.
Yeah, it was very cool. So these guys are just, they've outgrown themselves. They're literally building stuff in the parking lot. So they decide, yes, we love this location. Let's do it. We are going to build them a 75,000 square foot, brand new, state-of-the-art manufacturing and corporate headquarters on that site. And saw the renderings yesterday, and they're just stunning. They they think by the time we're done with construction, they will be ready for a second
For phase 2.
already.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, that's how many orders they have lined up. When that facility is done, they will literally double their employment.
That's fantastic.
They'll be at 150 plus when that facility is done. So that is the kind of success story and the kind of work that we strive to do every day, where we can take a local business. 2 of the guys come out of GE. The other guy was in the construction business. They formed this partnership. When they started, they had 2 employees. They're at 90 now. They'll be at 150 in 2 years.
Youngest manufacturing workforce I've ever seen in a business in Erie County.
Yeah.
They are hiring young people that are at the Erie County Technical School or have gone through a program at at Erie High or down in Corey.
A lot of welders, a
Yep.
lot of people in the trades, and they and I think it's a really good place to work because you can just see. And in the design of the building, they would bring in all the managers and their workers and say, what do you think? Will this work for you? Because they wanted to build it right the first time.
Yeah. It's that is a super fun, exciting success story
yeah.
because you can tour an outsider all you want, and a lot of them didn't bite, and yet it was a perfect fit for this company. And I'm super excited, and I think, frankly, it'll help give some momentum to developing the balance of that site.
Yes.
Which we're very hopeful for. Being mindful of kind of the window that I like to wrap these up in, but we do have a large parcel of land as well. It's not all brownfield. There is a greenfield site that we
do
have.
have one greenfield at 160 acres.
Mm-hmm.
For us old timers, the old green shingle truck stop, I-90 and Staratania Road. We have a lot of interest in that site. A lot of interest. It's the perfect site for a logistics company, a manufacturer that needs to ship because you're literally right there on 90. It is the only site we own that does not have a smokestack or needs cleaned up in some way. We will not be using any EPA cleanup dollars at that site.
That's good.
Yeah. It has the difference between a greenfield and a brownfield or a site in the inner city is the inner city, the building might be old and the ground might need some clean up, but it has all the infrastructure. The beauty of a greenfield is you don't have to clean it up, but it doesn't have any infrastructure. So that's what we're dealing with that site, is putting in the water, public water, making sure that it's got everything it needs so that it's build ready, pad ready.
That's right.
And so that's the goal. So there's no perfect piece of property. Each has its own challenges, but our job is to get them ready so that we can put a business there that can grow like 9 ships.
That's right. And I think it's important to kind of reinforce with people is that a big part of economic development and why capital investment by companies like a 9 ships or an existing company here in Erie that adds on 50 or 100,000 square feet, and we play a role or the state plays a role in providing some dollars to them. Those assets can't be hooked up to a tractor trailer and pulled out of community.
Right.
Even if they get a 10-year LRTA tax break, at the end of 10 years, whoever's owning that is paying taxes on it. So it takes time to understand that, right? So an example that I like to push back, if people remember, there was big complaint that we gave this this tax exemption, this property tax exemption to Bush Industries to build this facility on Oliver Road,
Right.
Which is the largest single facility in Erie County, roughly 1,000,001 square feet. And Bush did not meet all of the desired visions that they had. But that asset was here, and that asset allowed us to retain Lord Corporation's manufacturing operations, which is now Parker Lord.
Right.
And so you always want to be adding assets that you can use to employ people and generate income. And so, it's like you got to get your mind beyond that. Okay, they're only creating 100 jobs, but those 100 jobs bring, new jobs, whatever the new jobs are. You retain those 100 jobs. If you add 100 jobs, do the math on 100 times, let's just use 50 grand a year in salary. Use your number, 75 grand a year, whatever it might be. That's money that's churning in our economy and helping support so many. So the multiplier of that. So in order to do business in certain industries, not all, you need physical assets to do them. And that's what we try to help facilitate through all these different programs. And it's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap. But when you're in a market like Erie, you don't have the level of private investment that you do in a New York City or a Charlotte or a Nashville even. I hope someday we get to that level, but that's not where we're at, and we need to help stimulate the economy.
I always say it's the volume of capital.
Mm-hmm.
Like when people compare Erie, Pennsylvania to Grand Rapids, I always say, let's just pause. Let's look at the MSA size. Okay, so the first is, if we're 270, they're 540. They have twice the workforce. That gives them a distinct advantage.
Absolutely.
That's number one. Then let's go to the gross domestic product. Let's just look at that. It's not an imperfect stat, but if we're at 12 billion and they're at 36 billion, that means they're 3 times our size. That means there's 3 times as much capital rolling around in that economy.
Right.
And that gives them a distinct advantage. And so we just have to keep that in mind. To your point, we want to get more and more capital here. We want to get it in front of people so that they see it. And in order for somebody to say, yeah, I want to build my 500,000 square foot facility, I'm going to need 25 acres with all the infrastructure in it, and I'd prefer to do it on a greenfield site. What do you have? Right? And so we have to get it to the point where we go, hey, we've got 160 acres for you.
Right.
And you can accommodate multiple entities along that front.
Yeah. It's a process, and it's a long game. I always say the economic development is a long game.
It's yeah, but I think you've done a good job of kind of giving everyone an understanding of the steps in the process. And the other thing, economic development is not just a long game. You never hit the finish line.
It's constant.
I think we have a tendency to think we've arrived. No, It
No.
will. Even at our highest level of success, there will be like, nope, we got to keep moving because
Well,
as soon
because
as you
as
think,
soon as I fill Ironwork Square, we're back to square one where we don't have, Class A office space. As soon as we sell McCain Business Park, those 160 acres, well, where's the next business going to go?
yep.
So it's an ongoing process.
I always like to finish up with a few fun personal questions or questions that you can answer with your personal thoughts.
Okay.
And if you don't want to, so it's funny because the very first question I have is, let me throw it at you. In your opinion, what's an uncomfortable conversation that society is avoiding right now?
Politics. People are avoiding you cannot talk to your neighbors anymore and have a civil debate.
It is funny and when the can of worms gets opened by anyone, like if you were at a dinner party, have you?
Well, listen, I was at my family on Easter, and a cousin brought it up, and it was all downhill from there. And that's a shame. You used to be able to debate. I didn't like so and so's policy or whatever, but there's so much vitriol. There's so much anger pent up in everybody, no matter what side you're on. It's not pretty.
It isn't, and it's so unfortunate because sometimes I just want to know why they think that.
Well,
right? Just tell me. And by even asking the question, it can be interpreted that I have an opinion and that I want to debate. And I really don't want to debate.
Yeah.
I just want to know, tell me,
why do you think that way?
Why do you think that way?
Maybe you can change my mind. If you could talk civilly to someone, you might be able to change their mind or vice versa. But no. So I know that's a broad category, politics, but I think anything in that political realm right now is, off limits.
Yeah. Yeah, it is incendiary.
Yes.
And I think anyone who's lived for a period of time knows this is by far the most kind of partisan. There is a line in the room, in any room you go into, that you can't cross over.
You just can't. No.
It's really unfortunate.
It is.
It's unfortunate, but I do think we will get back. It's going to take time. This is what was the term that Carney used? There's been a rupture or a fracture.
Yeah.
I think that in American political dialogue, there's kind of that.
We will. I mean, everything is cyclical, and sometimes you have to get to the breaking point before you can. You have to hit rock bottom before you can climb back out.
Yeah. I'm laughing because this next question is just so everyone knows, I have 52 questions. So Tina drew these cards. I'm not randomly asking these questions.
So he says.
But the question for Two of Diamonds is, when was the last time and where were you that you swam in water over your head?
No. I was in West Palm Beach last year visiting an aunt and went swimming in the ocean.
And you went in over your head?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, were your feet on the ground and you were just...
No, I was swimming.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were there waves?
Yeah. I like to swim.
I do too. I just find it, there's something about it that's very childlike.
Yes, it's kind of freeing and it's therapeutic, and you're just, I don't know. You're right. It's childlike's a good way to put it.
Usually, if you're swimming in water, especially warm ocean water, you're not thinking about too many things that are stressing you out.
No.
Except
That's true.
Except maybe what's in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, last question. What's one of your biggest disappointments?
Personal?
Besides doing this podcast.
Yeah, right.
Personal, professional.
An hour of my life lost talking to Jake. I try not to think about something as a disappointment, but more as a part of the life process. So I might be disappointed in something in a moment, but I don't tend to hang on to it. I don't think that's healthy. I mean, I could say like, oh, put a bid on a house and didn't get it or whatever, but I don't know. That's a good question. Now you're going to make me think about that all night. I can't answer it.
Oh, you shouldn't do that. I think the fact that you can't answer it means that you've managed it really well. I mean, what you just said. It's like, well, I don't let it pull me down.
I don't think that's healthy. You can't dwell on stuff. Yeah, no. Maybe I've been very fortunate.
I'm going to do one last question out of our secret stash here. There was 2 reserved just in case, but I liked your answers so much. I like to hear this. What's your favorite meal?
Oh, any kind of pasta. I'm Italian, so any kind of pasta.
That's perfect. Tina, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jake.
This is the work you're doing is making a significant impact, and I think that I'm just happy we had the conversation because there's a tendency for people to read about this Tina Mengine person. Or this project, and there's a genuine curiosity out there by people in all walks of life and throughout the region that kind of want to know what's going on and who's doing it, and I think that they have an idea, much better feel for both the projects and for who's leading them, and at least I'm confident that they would come away after listening to you today with a lot of pride in the work that you're doing, and you should be very proud.
Well, thank you. It is a team effort, including my board. So thank you for your support. But I'm bullish on Erie, and I think more people need to see how much we've done and be proud of who we are.
That's right. There is no finish line, but we're definitely moving forward in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jake.
Thanks, Tina. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a great day.